You just fix that real quick. Yep. Oh, I'm glitching out. Canon event. It's a canon event. I present to you guys the Pokemon Unite Pokemon Awards, okay? Not to be confused with Pokemon Unite Player Awards, but these awards will be given out to Pokemon that came out in the year 2023. Some of the awards will be Pokemon in general that exist in Pokemon Unite, all right? But let's go over, what did we get in the year 2023? We got 14 brand new Pokemon. Dragapult technically came out on December 29th of 2022, but because Dragapult is only free to play in the new year, plus it was so close to the end of the year, we're gonna count it as a this year's Pokemon, all right? But you know, we had some Pokemon come out one after the other that really were disruptive to the game, like Confianzation, the Mewtwo's, the Eons, Umbreon, Leafeon, and Inteleon, and you know, some solid releases too. You know, I think Goodrow is pretty reasonable. Blaziken, Mimikyu, Metagross even. We're missing Meowscarada on this list. So technically 15 new Pokemon. Metagross isn't free yet, but he came out this year, so it's okay. And Meowscarada as well. Don't forget about the Meowscarada. How did we forget about Meowscarada? Pretty good though. Pretty good regardless. And we had some new items too. 7 technically new items if you count the Rusted Sword that goes on Zacian. But we had the Spoon, revolutionary item. The Hood, not as much. Spoon did end up getting nerfed. We didn't see any buffs on the Hood. The new cursed items to introduce some anti-healing to Pokemon Unite. Second time we have anti-healing. The first was on Delphox Unite. Now every character has access to it. And the Guard, Resonant Guard, and Charging Charm. 2 pretty good items. To be honest, all of these items were really impactful to the game. And they kind of interact with one another, right? Hood, better healing. Curse items, negate healing. Spoon, damage the tanks. Guard, protect against the tanks. Spoon, special attack item. The Charging Charm, a physical attack item. So pretty well-rounded setup. Something that everyone can use, a supportive item, a defensive item, some utility items, and some offensive items as well. So just a good set of items that came out this year. I'm happy with it. But with that undergo, we will be presenting the awards with the first category going to the best balanced Pokemon. So this is a Pokemon that not necessarily came out this year, even though we did have some good balanced releases this year. In general, for the year of 2023, what I think the best balanced Pokemon is. So remember, these are my picks. They're personal picks. Obviously, you guys will have your own takes, and that's completely respectable. There's no right answer when it comes to this. But the Pokemon that I think was the best balanced, and when I say best balanced, I'm referring to a Pokemon that never felt that it was bad throughout the year. It only had good moments, really. Maybe it got some buffs or some nerfs, but they were minor and not that significant. And a character in general that people enjoy playing. When you lose to it, it doesn't feel like, oh man, that was so unfair how that happened to me. As much as Pokemon Unite can go. So my pick for the 2023 best balanced Pokemon is Venusaur. I see the live audience. You guys have a lot of different answers. Mewtwo and Zacian, whoever said that, you're banned. If you predicted Venusaur, good job to you. Umbreon, thank you for the Prime. Umbreon, cool name, cool Prime, not the best balanced Pokemon. But Venusaur was good. This Pokemon received some buffs throughout the year, which just kept it up with some power creep, you could even say. But, you know, 2 viable builds throughout the year. A Unite move that's been strong, but not completely overpowered since its inception almost. I'd say Venusaur is a pretty good character. You know, you never feel bad as this character on your team unless you already have a bunch of attackers. It saw some tournament success, but never really from the perspective of, oh, this is the most broken Pokemon on the patch. We need to have it. Just a solid, well-rounded Pokemon. It felt good. Some honorable mentions, or the runner-up for me, I would say was Snorlax. Snorlax felt like, you know, it was around, never the best, never the worst, just a good tank. But I'm pretty happy with the state Venusaur is in. And yeah, Solar Beam, really, really good build. Petal Dance, not a bad build either. You know, just opportunities to completely pop off. Look at this. About to die. Boom. You survive. But it doesn't feel that bad, right? It felt good to me. I was a big fan of Venusaur in the year 2023. Anyways, if we want to talk about the best balanced Pokemon, it's important that we talk about the worst balanced Pokemon as well. This one should come as no surprise. I think people have 2, maybe technically 3 Pokemon that they might have in mind for this award. I see a lot of you already hinting into it. Without a doubt, Mewtwo Y. This character did not feel fair in the year 2023. Probably responsible for making the most number of people quit the game of Pokemon Unite, all on its own, right? I definitely felt really frustrated by this character year round. The time I played the game least probably coincided most with Mewtwo Y's existence. That being said, honorable mention / runner-up has to go to Mewtwo X, has to go to Zacian. I'd say all the EX Pokemon probably felt like the most imbalanced characters that are out there. And we can talk about the non-EX Pokemon, worst balance. Maybe it's Lapras, maybe it's Umbreon, maybe it's Inteleon, maybe it's Mew. It's hard to say, but the EX Pokemon, primarily Mewtwo Y, all of them probably felt like the worst Pokemon of the year. With that, the Pokemon Unite award ceremony does want to introduce you a clip from the history of Pokemon, where Mewtwo defies Giovanni, and I want to show you guys this cool new feature that YouTube has. And with that, that's Mewtwo Y on Netflix. How broken was this mon though, huh? Actually, wee baguette. And with that, we move on to the most improved Pokemon award. If Mewtwo Y was a stain on Pokemon Unite, which Pokemon have made the best comeback in 2023? Whether it was a Pokemon that came out this year, last year, whatever it was, which Pokemon do you think had the biggest glow up? I see a lot of good answers in the chat from the live audience. My pick for the most improved Pokemon in Pokemon Unite 2023 goes to Dragapult. This Pokemon was complete redacted when it first came out. It didn't match up the ADCs, attack damage carries. Those characters were already pretty much out of the meta. We started the year off with the Spoon. You know, while we did have access to the Scarf, which had come out quite recently as well, Dragapult was pretty bad until not that long ago. Towards the end of the year, we did see some Dragapult buffs. And, you know, this is where we see Dragapult at today. Some honorable mentions that I had listed on my list. I'd say Crustle had a really big glow up throughout the year. Crustle got a lot better as the year went on. Buzzwole became a Pokemon that was kind of on the radar into just constantly sneaking up, but I wouldn't say it was most improved. Buzzwole stayed quite consistent. Crustle definitely a really good contender for the award as well. With that, we're gonna go to the best new release that came out. For those of you guys that don't remember, these Pokemon plus Meowscarada were our new releases. When I think about best new release, I'm not necessarily thinking the Pokemon that peaked the highest, because we would all agree that that's pretty easily Mewtwo Y. But the Pokemon that felt the healthiest for the game, came out, was strong, but not completely overpowered, wasn't bad either. Just what Pokemon do we feel good about from a new Pokemon perspective? I see a lot of different answers. A lot of you do seem to agree with the comment I made as well. I'm gonna give it to Blaziken. Blaziken came out gunswinging, had a new kind of play style in, you know, this move shifting play style, right? Mew has something similar to it, but nothing really an all-rounder perspective tied into its Unite. Definitely a character that I thought would have been kind of hard to get right. But even on release, this Pokemon felt strong. It needed some minor buffs and it got them, and it's been adjusted a handful of times since it's come out. But I'd say for a Pokemon that breaks the norm, they did pretty good. I'm pretty proud of their release. You know, when we have releases like Zacian and Mewtwo and Umbreon and Lapras, Blaziken feels like it came out and it felt like it was a good addition to the game. My honorable mention personally goes to Chandelure. I see some people also commenting on that. Chandelure, definitely Pokemon that got a bit of changes since its release, but it's been able to find its own niche within the attacker role, and I'm pretty happy with Chandelure as well. Mimikyu, not that bad. I think the stain on Mimikyu's resume will always be that Play Rough buff and that one patch where Play Rough, for whatever reason, decided to become the single-handed best move in the game. It has gotten nerfed since then, but it's still a ridiculous move. And I think the reason why Chandelure doesn't win the award is on release, it definitely had its own issues with Imprison, how it came out, even the sound effects on it. But I'd say Blaziken, well-rounded for an all-rounder, solid Pokemon, happy with its release, and yeah, I like it. I'm very happy with it. All right, we talked about Pokemon that were good, Pokemon that were good for the wrong reasons, like Mewtwo, one of the best Pokemon in the game, since release and to this day. Talked about the best new release, the most improved Pokemon, but the award that no one likes to hand out at any award show is the worst Pokemon. What do you guys think was the worst Pokemon of the year? Doesn't have to be a Pokemon that came out last year, but 2023, from January to now, which Pokemon do you think consistently stayed bad? You know, think about characters that might be bad now, but were good towards the start of the year. Those aren't the worst Pokemon. If you take the average of every meta that existed this year, which Pokemon do you think systematically falls to the bottom of the list? I see some foreshadowing in the chats, and I know it's going to hurt to see, but is our lovely neighborhood squirrel, Greedent. I think Greedent, as a Greedent fan, you know, this Pokemon constantly has struggled, whether its Bullet Seed's been bugged or unbugged or whatever interaction it's had. It's only received the nerfs practically since its release. It's had some, you know, stuffed cheeks or Bullet Seed buffs. But right now, it feels like it doesn't really succeed in its role. You want to look at the pool of defenders right now. The year 2023 was the year of defenders. We saw Tree getting massive buffs to the point where Trevenant was a monster for a majority of this year. Right now in the meta, Blastoise exists as a brawling kind of defender that can just keep fighting you. We had a Lapras meta, we had Umbreon metas, we had both of those characters exist at the same time being really strong. Crustl's good. Even Mamoswine got some buffs halfway through the year and really brought it, you know, under the spotlight. You want to look at bulky Pokemon that exists in that role. Buzzwole has been been good all year round. Even Azumarill is a brawly kind of all-rounder. Never been that bad. And finally, Mr. Mime, a character that was just good all year round. Had its downfall moments as well. But all of these characters exist in a similar role to Greedent, these tanky, annoying, in-your-face kind of Pokemon. But Greedent just seems to do worse than all of them combined. It definitely had its good moments, though, you know. And it definitely, in a chaotic environment, it has its own role of just being so oppressive, living in the enemy jungle. But I think in better games, this Pokemon tends to get ignored, and its value only really goes up if it can force a way to be in your face, and all the other Pokemon I listed earlier seem to do a lot better. But no, look guys, I'm a fan of Greedent. I love just existing in the enemy walls. Look at the life of this Delphox right here. You know, I will not leave them alone. And I wish this Pokemon was playable right now, but as of recording the live award show ceremony in December of 2023, Bullet Seed is bugged. And if you get stunned or anything during the cast of Bullet Seed, it gets interrupted, which makes this Pokemon pretty difficult to play in that build. The Covet Belch build, it's a shadow of its past. Okay, so we talked about Pokemon. What do we think in terms of the new items that came out? Was the best new item? As a reminder, here are the new items that came out. Again, we're not going to include the Rusted Sword in this, because if technically, Like, if you want to be really technical about it, the rusted sword would be technically the best item because you need it on Zacian, and Zacian was technically really broken. But yeah, all of you guys are saying spoon. Easy award to the spoon. The item was completely broken. It needed to get nerfed, and it's still really broken. Completely changed the game around special attack characters existing. Made it so that tanks weren't just completely unkillable for special attack characters. Even though they already kind of dealt pretty well with those types of mons, this item only furthered that kind of interaction that existed between the two characters. But yeah, the only new item to get nerfed, so only one of these items that's actually been nerfed. Technically, we might have seen some curse item nerfs from release, but we don't know if those were bugs or not. Out of these items, though, Spoon the only one to actually receive a nerf. Definitely really broken. My honorable mention, though, does go to the Resonant Guard. I think that item came out towards the end of the year, made tanks a lot more fun to play around. Pretty much a mandatory item on defenders, so pretty good item, gotta go up there. And another honorable mention goes out to the cursed items. Now, they might not be as influential, you see them every game in your games, but they added a good check to heal spamming, which was starting to get really annoying. So indirect nerf to Clefable and Blissey and those types of healers, but regardless, I think a very valuable item. So the best new item does go to the Slick Spoon. Might be the best item in the game, period, compared to all the items. I think I could say that. Cool. So the final award, the Golden Trophy, the Pokemon that we think deserves the most valuable Pokemon of the year. Now, when I think of this award, this is a very subjective pick, okay? I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of different answers. A lot of people are going to pick their favorite Pokemon in this.
Happy New Year to everyone in their heart.
Happy New Year, Pet Flurry. Thank you for the resub. Also, it interrupted me rudely. I'm kidding. I want you guys to think of this Pokemon as a Pokemon that was relevant year-round. Had definitely its strong moments, right? This can't be a Pokemon that hasn't been strong throughout the year, right? Strong, notable, exciting, fun to play, flexible, as in, like, you know, it can fit into a lot of different compositions, and just, you know, a Pokemon that was cool to me, right? At least this is my interpretation of this award. So I see a lot of different answers, right? This one's probably gonna be the most controversial one, and I think there's a lot of good answers that I'm seeing from the live audience here as well. But there's only one that we can pick for this award. And my pick for the most valuable Pokemon, the MVP of 2023, goes to Mew. Now, I don't think there's any answer I could give that wouldn't upset at least some groups of people. But this Pokemon, out of the year, was good. You know, it was never the peak that it was on release, but it started the year pretty strong. We saw tournaments where Mew was prioritized in draft really early on. Sometimes it drew out bans. Halfway through the year, this Pokemon saw some buffs, which were questionable, kind of took it over the top. Couple months after that, it did receive some compensation nerfs. But I think this Pokemon is very fun. It's very exciting to watch. It's a lovable Pokemon, and I think it's a good pick for the MVP award. How can you hate me? How can you hate Mew? If everything wrong with Pokemon Unite was Mewtwo, I'd say, like, the only one to really defeat it in the first Pokemon movie was Mew. Yeah, I was really happy with this Pokemon, and I think the buffs that it got, maybe it didn't deserve, but it really made the Pokemon exciting and brought some fresh air to the Pokemon, breath of fresh air. The nerfs that we saw probably kept it more in line with where this Pokemon deserves to be. But I would say that, you know, going into next year, if there's a Pokemon that you want to invest your time into getting good at, Mew is probably the best Pokemon I could recommend. You know, you can constantly improve yourself playing this character. You can get better and better. Lots of different play styles. I don't think it's a Pokemon that's ever really going to be bad. I don't see them nerfing this Pokemon to the point where it'll ever be bad, just because of what it means to Pokemon and then the genre as a whole. And, you know, if you're nervous about the difficulty of this Pokemon, I would say that it's surprisingly easy to pick up. Your first couple games, you might struggle. I'm not saying you will, but you might. But watch some Mew gameplay. There's a lot of good Mew players out there. Learn this Pokemon, and it's worth the effort. And it is very cute. Right? And that did go into consideration of this award. Some honorable mentions for the MVP, because I do know people have a lot of different opinions on this. Blastoise, definitely a consideration. Blastoise fell almost under the radar for how good of a Pokemon it has been year-round. It's never been by far like a really Omega Giga scary broken Mon. But it's always been good. Whether you're playing the spin-oriented build or you're playing around the Surf Pump build, whether it's in the top lane as more of an all-rounder or it's a defender with the XP share, I think Blastoise had a good year. And Blastoise definitely would be a consideration for MVP of the year. I can't imagine really awarding it to any other Pokemon. Pokemon like Urshifu had really wild rides, ups and downs. Definitely started the year strong and was strong for a majority of the year. But so was Zacian. Zacian was good since release. Those Pokemon don't feel like there were positive additions to the game as much as Mew was in the year 2023. But yeah, that's my list. That's the end of my Pokemon Unite 2023 award show.